This is an HR program on demand, a living seed capsule of work life and workplace coming live from a rooftop in Stockholm, Sweden. It's me, Ann-Marie Andrich, and
me, Katarina Berg.
A vodcast, if you like, on HR, straight across the counter. Sponsored by HRTheRealDeal, HR by HR for HR. Katarina, is it fair to say that HR has been under pressure since COVID-19 became a reality?
I think it's fair to say that everybody's been under pressure. It's been unprecedented times, right? Very few of us were alive when the Spanish flu kind of went all over the world. And we've seen other crises obviously hit a lot of people, but in specific parts, even if it's been big parts of the world. This time, it didn't matter what pocket of the world you were sitting in, didn't matter what industry, didn't matter if you had a job or not. We all know and also have felt what the COVID-19 has done for us, work life, private life. So yes, but to bring it back to HR, I think a couple of things. First of all, Churchill learned or taught us one thing, never to let a good crisis go to waste, right? And I think a lot of companies don't really necessarily understand and appreciate all the things that HR does, because I think a lot of HR departments do amazing work, but they might not package it or they might not communicate all the things that needs to be in place so the rest of the organization can actually do a great job. Here comes a crisis and first of all, everybody gets scared. Nobody really knows. There's no real playbook. And you have to take decisions before you have all the data or all the facts. And you get different data and different facts depending on what country you are, what news channels you have or sources you have, depending on what authorities you have in that country. And now when we connect it, you get all those resources. And I think people got scared for good reasons and also for the wrong reasons. And here to kind of make any sense and to sort out different things into boxes, I think HR played a very, very, very big part. And I'm not saying that every HR department succeeded, but I'm pretty sure that they worked really hard. They were under pressure. What I have heard globally and from all of my network, and not just in Stockholm or Sweden or in the Nordics or in Europe, but all over the world, that a lot of the crisis management from day one, when it actually started or when we thought it was starting over in Asia, it's been 24/7. And it looks like right now in September, that it's going to be 365 too, right? So yes, I think tremendous pressure on HR. And there were so many things that you could do right or wrong. There were so many things you could do with dignity or not. There were so many things or path in the road where you could go wrong. But if you didn't, and if you really dared and had the willingness to lead, I think you could do the things that are super important. You could actually, calm people down. You could reinforce the things that are very important. You could prove yourself of having a big and important role for all you people within the organization.
Yeah, I fully agree. One of the things that I reflected upon when all of this started, and you mentioned it as well, I mean, this crisis did not look like any other crisis. And typically, you have like an organizational setup. You typically know who are part of a crisis management team. But things shifted so quickly, and they shifted from country to country, right? Mm-hmm. And you basically had to, you had to try to be a step before the crisis, which was sometimes tricky because it evolved so quickly. One of the things that I truly, truly appreciated was the fact that the HR community also came together. If, for example, my company, we were, we had plans in place or we had a policy in place. I typically share that one, or I asked you or someone else in my network to say, how far have you come? Is there anything that you can share? And I think that was also, it was nice to see how we as HR peers, regardless of where we were in, regardless of which kind of business or industry, we leveraged on our competence and experience, and I truly appreciate that. And those are one of the things that I remember early in the days, right?
Yeah, so it hasn't just been bad times.
Right.
Even if I think anybody that says that they haven't suffered in one way or another in these turmoil times, I think it's also fair to say that a lot of good things has come out of this. And I think one of them are community sharing,
Yeah.
and the crowdsourcing that happened between HR peers, and the generosity of, we have a playbook now, or this is our guidelines, and this is how we dealt with it. And I also think that for instance, the very local kind of industries or businesses could then tap into the experience, some of the failures and mistakes, a lot of the learnings that was made by the companies that actually then felt and had to handle the pandemic where it started, and then when it moved over to Europe and Africa, and then when it passed and then reached US and Latin America and so on and so forth. I think that was a very, very open, and even people that you don't know reached out and said, how are you doing? What are your biggest takeaways? And how can we fast forward our crisis management? And I never heard anybody go like, no, that is a secret, or no, that is a part of our strategy, because it actually came down to people. So I think that has come, it's kindness and generosity sharing, and not because there was a cool name for it, like crowdsourcing, or there was a tech made it possible. It was just one thing that came very natural from one human being to another human being, from one HR department to another HR department.
Exactly, I agree. And it was very clear. I mean, we were all sort of battling the same things, right? So I really like that, and I appreciate that a lot. So if we go into sort of the hardcore of how you dealt with the crisis and how you managed and organized yourself, how did you actually do that?
So we have a crisis management at Spotify. We actually have several depending on what type of crisis it is. But if we talk specifically about the pandemic right now, it actually follows in under the crisis management that is led by HR 100%. So we have, besides myself, there are 3 people that are in 3 big different, they are in 3 different time zones. Which means that we actually can work 24/7. So I used to say that I actually went to bed and I woke up with one of the men in the crisis management team, because he's based in Asia, right? And then we had somebody in the US. But what that does for you, and we have learned the hard way, because we've been in other crises like that, when our people were in danger. So we had found a way to set that up and organize ourselves in a way where we know that we can act fast, which is very important, right? No matter crisis, as fast as possible to really come together, declare that it is a crisis, set up the crisis management team, and then take notes and communicate and do the handovers in a, if possible, a seamless way was really important. And then start to communicate, even the things that you didn't know. Just be very open and transparent. We don't know, but this is the facts that we have. This is the way we take decisions. These are the authorities that we listen to. And this is how we're going to communicate to you. So I think that was more about the setup. We didn't change much from the setup we had. But what we did early on, and I think that we have actually learned from those earlier days when we had to report things, was to be clear, as always, right? Consistent, and be compelling. And then when you say consistent, when something is changing and the nature is changing all the time, it might be contradictory to say that it needs to be consistent. But the consistency is a lot of, okay, every Friday there was a letter from one in the crisis management team of what happened. Let's recapture what happened this week and what we said and what happened in the world. The second thing with the consistency is that we dare to say like, okay, we need to do some redefining or changing or remessaging some things, because now we have new facts. When you do that, you also open up for people that are scared, not stupid, but scared, going like, but last week you said, or yesterday you said, or an hour ago you said. And then you have to just be calm and again explain, okay, but now we have more facts, we have more authorities, we have more science, or we have more research, or whatever it is. And now we take a new decision built on that. So I think the 3 C's were super important in the crisis management. And then further on, the things that was also, and the compelling, obviously. People were scared, and they were scared for different reasons, and we all react different ways. And then I think you had the two kind of, in one corner you had the families that all of a sudden were stuck in an apartment or in a house, and in most parts of the world in isolation, and also, you know, in some sort of quarantine. And there you were with your partner 24 hours every day, and it just kept going, and with your children, and then you had to do homeschooling and take care of them, and then you had to also try to explain to yourself and to you near and dear, and you didn't have, you know, your parents, and you just didn't have your support system, and that world became very small and quite tiring. And then you had the single household. Not family, not mom, not dad, not friends, not colleagues, and not the human touch. You just didn't have anything, and then you had a scale. And then for us being totally global again, you had the countries that just decided to do a lockdown, 100%, and then you had Sweden, that were like social distancing, or, you know, physical distancing, wash your hands. Stay at home, work at home, you know, and 100% try to be, you know, thinking about the people that are actually doing the heavy lifting right now, everybody that works in a hospital, and then please help out, you know, flattening the curve. So we had all the different things to take into account, and I think it's fair to say that we did fairly well in the beginning, because you kind of driving the car and making up the route as you go along, and you have to take a decision once in a while too, when you know, pump the brakes and when you accelerate, when you take a left turn or you take a right, without necessarily having the full map. But the only mistake you can do is not to do anything and communicate very seldom or not at all, and not admit your mistakes.
You said so many great things there. And I would say that I'm sure that there are quite a few people who recognize all of the things that you walked us through. What would you say, because I know you also did quite a lot on sort of keeping the engagement and the morale going in the organization, and especially you were saying, you know, there were people who were scared, or, you know, they were isolated, they didn't have their families around them, so they were quite alone. So and it seems that was rather deliberate from you, and it started with I think you did a challenge, the lemon challenge. What was that?
No, but we all know it's easier when everybody comes in. Sometimes we forget, and sometimes we don't appreciate when you can come and stand and have a conversation or a chit chat, or just do some, you know, what we love in Sweden is Swedish fika. Get your coffee, talk a bit, and just relax or diffuse, or, you know. And all of a sudden, we were in all these different parts around the world, right? It was forced work from home. It wasn't one of those, hey, technology now, or I have the freedom, or it's really nice to work at home. It was forced work from home, which I think is totally different from distributed work or something else. And then since, you know, inclusiveness has always been important to us, and a sense of belonging important, and we talk about culture and the importance of cultures in a different episode. So how do you do that? And how do you do and try to do the things that you always do and that is important to your people? How do you do that when everything changes overnight? Or did they? Because in one way, I think we cheated in companies like Spotify because we never were analog. We were digital from day one. So the getting a grips over the technology and how do we do meetings and how do we, you know, conduct ourselves, we didn't have to do that. And I think a lot of companies use that kind of crisis to do that, right? And good for them. But where we started was, so learning, development and growth, super important for us because that is our edge, and really staying positive and passionate, curious about things and learning new things. How do we do that when there is not just blended learning and classroom learnings and coming together and working shoulder to shoulder to some of the smartest people in the world? All of a sudden that shoulder is kind of further away. And the meetings and the energy and the things that happens in these meetings when you don't have the plexi that we have here. But the thing is, we then have to repackage all our trainings, all our offerings, no matter if it was people experience, if it was social events, you know, everything from an after work to a DJ set, to learnings, to leadership training, to intro days, all the things that we are proud of, that is near and dear to us, that is our social glue, things that really works out well for us. How do we do that now? And already in January, all of my teams sat down in their different smaller teams and like, this is the way we're going to do it. So a lot of production, not so much out of the box thinking, but really leaning hard into technology and the possibilities and also the opportunities. And then I think just, you know, choosing joy, really choosing joy. Instead of going, this is hard, this is not social the way we like it, know it and want it. Just accepting a couple of things and then tweaking it and twisting it to really get a jive so it worked for us. Doesn't mean that we don't long to come back and see each other. Doesn't mean that we have cracked 100% the code of how do you get and create a sense of a belonging. And now I know that you think that I lost your question about the lemon channel, but I think that is the backdrop, right? And everything was so serious, and you sprinkle a bit fear, and you sprinkle a bit like new, and you sprinkle that we all humans don't like change, and you sprinkle, you know, also a couple of things that we know. Change avert is actually not the new black, not the old black. It's just a part of who we are as human beings. So you also have to have a lot of fun. And how do you do that without, you know, going wrong? Because the timing could be so wrong for an individual or two or for a lot of people. But I think it goes back to one of our values, playfulness, right? If people know that you are not doing anything to hurt anybody or offend anybody, but you are coming from a warm place and you want to bring a smile or even a laughter into the day-to-days, you have to figure out how to do that. And I think the PX team or people experience teams have been really, really awesome at doing that with, you know, the game board games or the challenges or the DJ sets or the afterworks or the daily ficas or whatever. But then the lead team or the management team also decided to, hey, we're going to invite you to our homes and we're going to challenge each other. And it happened to be something that is good for you. Vitamin C's, right? And two, it's really, really hard to do very fast. So it started with me challenging, you know, one of my colleagues or peers in the lead team saying, you know, can you eat 2 full lemons faster than me? And it wasn't by hacking it, right? You can't squeeze them and make juice and drink it, because that will be faster. You actually have to cut them up, and then you have to chew them, and you have to film that, and then you have to pass the baton on to the next person. So we did that. And I love lemons and I love things that are sour, but I have to say that was tough. It didn't taste good. And I love to see the rest of them actually in some pain. And hopefully we brought some laughter into the organization too.
I'm sure you did. At least it looked funny when you did it. I saw a few clips, right? And this obviously spread into the organization,
Yes.
and people were competing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And it got faster and faster.
Yeah.
And then when it trickled down, you could see whole teams doing on Zoom. So they were eating at the same time and having music and doing different challenges and roaring for each other, especially the ones that were struggling the most and really, really did not like chewing and eating and swallowing those lemons. But hey, vitamin C, good for you.
Definitely good for you. You were referring to the people experience team that you have, and I also know that you have obviously a team working on the social connection in Spotify. How much would you say that you steered that engagement and boosting the morale during the crisis from the people experience team, and how much would you say came from your own people in the organization?
I think it's always about the people. I think you can show the way. I think you can maybe amplify the volume a bit. I think you can provide some new ideas. You can get the structure. And here I'm in awe what the PX team did. But when you then listen into the organization, when you talk to your people, meaning all people, and then I also have to say and hand it to our managers. I think they all stepped up to the plate during this crisis and still are. You see all those numbers and the data that is out there. I think that went for our organization too and our manager. I think the one-on-ones were more frequent and more often. I think everybody understands what screen fatigue is. I think we tried everything that was relevant for individuals and teams of, meeting free Fridays, taking time off, reminding people about, how to take time off and, use your parental leave, use your vacation, don't work longer hours, but also work became a lot of the day-to-day purpose in life, right? Because you can only watch and binge watch that many episodes or whatever. You also need to do something that makes you feel good and that you actually contributed to something on a day-to-day. So I think the PX team was core to a lot of things, but I have to say the creativity and the innovation and having each other's back and being kind and see each other and hear each other and confirming each other, I think that spread right through the organization, which made me super proud. I think I have seen us live our values in so many ways and shapes and forms and fashions over the year. But I always say hard times define you and the crisis really defines you. And I think this defined us. It's still ongoing and it doesn't look like it's over. And it also wears you down. And here I think you have to be lowering your guard, especially as a management team. You have to sometimes talk about how tough it is for you and make sure that everybody knows it's okay not to be okay. Because one of the things that I also hope that we will learn from this experience is to talk even more open and about mental health. And here, it's not an excuse, but it's something that we all experience at the same time, even if it affects us differently. So I think mental health as well as physical health, especially if you live in a very small flat or a one-room studio. And here it goes back to kindness can never be out of fashion.
True, kindness can never be out of fashion. Great. So again, it seems like the band manifesto and your company culture served you well during this crisis, or cemented itself during the crisis. Would you agree?
I think so in so many ways. I hope that our people and everybody that is within Spotify is not thinking that, oh, this was band manifesto, this was this was part of the band manifesto, because then it's not part of who we are, what we breathe, how we take decisions. But for sure, for the people that has in their roles to guide, to navigate, to be that compass, to provide, guidelines and write those very important and hopefully, compelling write-ups about where we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it. It served and it was key to everything that we did. But one thing that I think that I couldn't be happier, but it's more of, I think, who we are. I started off saying that we are only 4 people in the crisis management team, and then we hand over if it's a long crisis, and because sleeping 4 to 5, maybe 6 hours at the most for a month or 2 or 3 or 4, it actually wears you down. And then you have to hand over, and then we hand over to 4 other people. And the roles in that team is very clear, and you kind of know who does what. And then for all the decisions that hits all the organization and also maybe is connected with a bigger, investment or a cost, it goes from me as a suggestion, or I would say recommendation from the crisis management team, from me to Daniel, our CEO, and then back. This means that big decisions of sending people home before nobody else has taken that decision in your country or your part of the world is easy, goes fast. If it means that we're gonna pay for, lunch when people, or food when people work from home, goes really fast. If it's a decision of prolonging and communicating why we are staying home until the end of the year or to midsummer 2021, it goes super fast. And it goes back to that speed. What is actually really important during crisis management? It is how fast you get on top of the problem, issue, or the crisis. 2, how fast you act without being impulse driven, so you have to backpedal every time and go like, oh, sorry, just kidding, because that doesn't build any rapport. But just to be very, very few and not have bureaucracy, or like, hey, we have a big team and everybody and every function and every division has to be in this. I think that is all good, and I understand the intention of that. But it slows you down. It gets easily into politics. And 3, usually when more people add things, ideas, and also angles and, themselves, not necessarily better decisions. The risk is if the 4 goes wrong and the recommendation is wrong, it's totally wrong. If the recommendations are good or even semi-good, and you auto-direct all the time, and also you reiterate decisions, and you tell people so they can, if you have an open kind of landscape like we do, you get all the inputs in, either Workday or Unplugged or town halls. So you get that input anyway, where what people liked, did not understand, and why they are upset or why they're super happy or very thankful. And I think that all the emails, all the reach outs and all the comments has been both reassuring, but also I think the love and the smile it has put on that team that worked day and night for really living up to what we always said, that we are a people first company, and our people and their families' safety and health comes first. And I couldn't be prouder of the team, but I couldn't be prouder of the lead team or the management team either, that when it actually came under pressure, that this was the decisions that we were taking. What is most important? Our people. What is most important when things are really shaky? It's their health and their lives. So how do we make sure that they stay safe, stay at home, and have during the circumstances, the best kind of life they can have and work life they can have. Not saying that it's perfect right now.
I think it's interesting the way that you describe your process, because if I understood you correctly, basically the crisis management, the HR crisis management team, right? You had suggestions, then you basically, chatted with Daniel or, called him, however you did that, straight to him. But you did not actually involve the lead team in this. I really think this is interesting, and I think there are quite a lot of companies who have struggled with this, and especially when you say, there are so many people involved, there are so many stakeholders, and you want to be inclusive, but that can sometimes slow you down. So why didn't you elaborate a little bit? How did you actually do this? Okay. What happened with your peers?
No, but I think it goes back to, it stems from a couple of things, right? You have to be very up to date, and you have to understand, and you have to have proven yourself understanding the business 100%, all of the business. So it's not going to be a typical, and I say this with a typical HR decision, right? It has to be a business decision, but with people first. But if you have proven that to every peer you have in the lead team, that you actually know and understand what makes their part of the world run smoothly, and what the hiccups will be depending on what decision you take, then I would say, and people will most likely have to sit down for this, 80% of all the decisions, all the communication, and everything that went into the organization, day and weekly, was taken by those four, 80%. And as soon as it was one of those, hey, we're going to go out, broader communication, which we did several times during a day, I looped in just before the people in the lead team, the people that direct reports into Daniel. So they knew. They had a chance to react, but they did not. And this is also when you have a lead team that actually works together, trusts each other, and understands that this is a crisis, and we have said, and I buy in, it's people first. And also understand, if we had more time, and if we would have slowed it down, we would have more things to consider, but not necessarily taking a better decision for the crisis itself. Then 10% was things that, okay, let's talk with the D team. But the D team is also connected and digital, and very kind of, I would say they're super smart about each other's areas. So it wasn't like I had to poke them and then nudge them and then ask them. It was like, go, here's some input. This is my 2 cents. But it was never long rants. It was very short. So when we communicate about other things and long-term things and business ideas and bets and beliefs and, the KRs or the focus areas, obviously that is a totally different process. But this is crisis management. So they are also there for a reason, right? Then it's very light touch. It's like, when you play soccer, it's not like, let me dribble for a while. No, it's one touch, very fast up, and the same goal, the same objective. So 10% was more, hey, what do you think about this? Or this is what we're planning to do. And just so you know, hit me with your input. And most of the time it was just, you guys are doing a good job. It was like boosting energy back to me and my team. Then 10%, really important, will affect us not now in the crisis only, but maybe 2021, maybe 2022. Big things of how we work, how we decide what we do with the workforce and things like that, obviously discussed with Daniel. But he also is very fast and not afraid of taking decisions. And then we give him recommendation, which is kind of 360, and then he comes back, and a lot of times he comes back with something not necessarily totally different, but quite out of the box thinking, because he obviously knows his business, he knows his people, he knows his management team, And that is then what we communicate. And this made us, be able to be on our toes and act really fast. And usually in matter of minutes. I don't think, and I might be lying, but I don't think that we waited for any decisions that we wanted to take and communicate longer than an hour.
That's rather quick.
It's pretty quick.
It's pretty quick. And when you, just for the sake of the people who are listening, when you refer to the D team, that is your management team reporting into Daniel, right?
It is the people that report into Daniel. So, sorry, and thank you for clarifying that.
And why is it called the D team?
It actually is the D team because Daniel is Daniel with a D.
Yeah.
And it is for another reason, which is, I think, more interesting, is because our lead team is actually much bigger, because when we take decisions, it's not just the people that sit in a D team. It is all the people that are important to take decisions for short-term plans, but also long-term time visions, which is very, very important to us. And that is more of how we work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I think that was important
Good
to clarify.
clarification.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap this up, and I think it's listening to you and how you manage the crisis is super inspiring, and I'm sure that some of our listeners have learned quite a lot. What would you say? Again, even if it seems like you had a really good process and ways of working and were very quick, I'm sure that there were things that you could have done differently, or learnings that you take with you until the next crisis. What would that be? What did you learn?
I think we learned tons, and since we take notes all the time, so we can, improve and iterate and really do in real time, but also when we come to different kind of phases, we do retros, right? It's important.
And what is a retro?
It's looking back on all the things that you had at hand, the decisions you took, how you acted, and how you can improve. So it's one of those, how can we constantly get better, and not necessarily talk about what you did right or wrong, or what I did right or wrong, because then we all get defensive. Very on a kind of neutral way of what did we do. And here it's easy when you are, for instance, in May, what did we do wrong in March? But in May we have so much more information, and the people that are experts have more information, and we can learn from so many different sources. And it's also important then to, hey, let's not do what we did in March then if this happens again. But let's not get really beaten down by it either, because in March we knew almost nothing and we had to take decisions, right? So it's one of those, being quite sober and being very honest and very open, and never go into what did that specific person do and not do. What did we do as a team? And what was the output and the outcome? Because the output and the outcome is the important thing, right? Rather than who said what and who didn't, and who actually overslept and were not on that crisis management call 5 o'clock in the morning, which is not 5 o'clock in the morning then in Sydney, right? Or in Boston or in New York. So you have to also be kind of kind to yourself, but have that urge to learn and improve. I think that is important. So I think one of the things that I should have done better leading the crisis management team, the switch between what we call the inner circle, which is the crisis management, and then there's the second circle, and then there's the outer circle. The switch of the inner circle, I waited too long. We were tired and super tired, and I think we were running on our,
the fuel that wasn't there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think everybody did it for the right reasons. I'm not really sure if the quality got worse, but I think we paid a big personal toll, all of us. So I should have done that. That is actually on me. The second learning, I think is very clear, was that the way that we are set up actually works for us. Usually learnings are like, okay, what did we do wrong? How can we improve? But the second one, by having a very small team, having people that trust each other and work really well and do very, very tight, if not seamless kind of handovers, helped us and gave us also that kind of courage to sometimes communicate without not necessarily knowing. And the third learning was, if people are suffering out there, if people are alone, if people are also afraid, if people are not feeling good at all, how can we take the extra time when we actually do the write-ups and they're all correct? How can we put in some emotions there? How can we put in maybe even some jokes? How do we dare to do that? But how can we be much more compassionate in our writing than just stating,
Facts.
These are the things, which is quite easy to do when you are running a crisis management team. I think those are the big learnings. But then we have like a long list of things that this stays, this improves, this is so dead, but this is like all the things that are really working for us.
Yeah. And I think, great, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think a lot of companies have similar, right? And when you do those retros or feedback sessions, learning sessions, I think that also is a good tool to help yourself, evaluate and see, okay, what are the things that we need to improve, and what are the things that we need to continue to strengthen? Because there are a few things there as well, right?
Yeah, but you have to own up too. I mean, sometimes you just take the wrong decision or you communicate in a way that your intention was not to hurt anybody, but
Right.
So you do your mea culpa, right? You go out, you own up, and you apologize, and hopefully people understand. And I know it's so debated now to not say that you should assume good intent, but I think our people knew that we were doing our best, and sometimes, yes, that was not good enough, but that also kept us. We had like our eyes on the money all the time, and the money was actually safety right. of our people, and not necessarily on what's best for the business now, what's best for the business. And then when your people are doing well, right, then the business are doing well.
Exactly.
So you will get that, but I think there's very few people that wake up in the morning, or even when they struggle to go to bed or have a hard time to go to sleep because they're worried. It's not going to be better if people talk about performance or budgets or hitting targets, or that is just plain stupid, to be honest. It's all about you and the people that are in the family, or for us in the band.
Yeah. And safety.
Yeah.
Safety, exactly. Great, thank you so much. So interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Would you like to wrap this up the way that you typically do it with the 3 things?
Yeah, why not? The 3 things is always, especially during Corona times, it is stay safe, stay strong, and stay active.
Great.
Ide medalje.
Ide medalje.
And what the freaking frack do I need with that? Well, the 3 things is stay safe, stay active, stay strong. And I got them in the wrong order.
Yes.
And I was like, stay safe, stay active. No, for fuck's sake. It's also like, stay safe, stay close. No, what? I love that you tell me but stay close.
Katarina, would you like to end this session with the 3 things that you typically say? Nej. What is the freaking question? Wait, give it to me.